Hey guys, how are you? Happy Friday. I know we're off. It was supposed to be Tuesday, but Tuesday, Friday, it's the summer. It kind of all runs together anyway, right? Yes, we are still having a happy, hot summer. It is so ridiculously hot. I know. But it's better than snow, so we're happy about that. Hey, you guys.
It's just me and you tonight, boss.
Okay. Let me make sure that I have the Wi-Fi on. I did my first ever Do Not Disturb, so I'm ready. Yeah, remind me to not disturb myself after. I'm ready, Freddie.
Okay. Start with some email ones while we have people coming in. All right. So, first one up. My son has a G tube. He pulls it out all the time. After 12 minutes, reinserting it can cause pain, and after an hour, he'll need a medical intervention beyond us as parents. The school nurse has been putting it back in, but recently she told us that she could not. She said it is outside of her scope to reinsert it, and a parent will have to come to the school to do that. Is that allowable?
I mean, I can certainly understand that. That's a medical procedure, and you want to be safe. The student's skin is open. Obviously, you have access to their internal body. So I would be grateful that I had a nurse that knew how to do it for a while. Again, that might be somebody from her leadership telling her that. So you want it done safely every time. Obviously, parents know how to do it the best because they use it the most. But maybe you can get updated doctor's orders. Maybe there's an updated components of it that can make it easier for the student.
Okay.
Was that a good answer?
That's perfect. You know me.
I don't know, really. That's my answer.
If a co-taught course is in a high school student's IEP under supplementary aids and services, but there is not enough staff for that course to run as a co-taught class, or the student's schedule does not allow for the co-taught class, is that a violation of the IEP?
We deliver the IEP in the conformity of it. The law says we deliver the IEP in the conformity. What does that mean? That means last year at his annual IEP meeting, we agreed upon present levels, IEP goals, accommodations, the least restrictive environment, and we agreed on a very detailed schedule of services. So if that is what we decided as a committee was appropriate, that's conformity. Unless you've come back to the table and say, hey, this is not what he needs, then you've denied him a free appropriate public education. And we missed y'all Tuesday. I don't even know how you can go on with your Tuesday without me. It's traumatic, isn't it, Alicia?
It was something.
I don't
Are you familiar with the DODEA schools for military? My husband, active duty Air Force, was denied a job in Guam because the school on Anderson Air Force Base cannot accommodate my son's IEP. Is that discrimination?
So I don't have specificity around that. I do have families that are in military bases in America. I've not ever come across that. So in America, between the ages of 3 and 22, you are to be have your IEP implemented with fidelity. So I've never heard of that. I certainly would reach out to leadership in your district and or your military branch for clarification.
All right.
These are tough ones, Alicia. Like, can I have some Friday night football? Like,
Okay, sure. Our school district says they are no longer saying one-to-one support, but they are saying an additional adult support. I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
and we can call it whatever we want. We just have to have it laid out in the program. So the IEP has to be so pristine that it describes itself without anybody standing there describing it. It should give you the details and the elements of what happened in that meeting, so that if you're in Michigan and you're moving to Montana, that those two school districts are going to do approximately the same thing. So if you decide that the student needs an additional adult person, then let's talk about that across content area. Does he need it at breakfast? Does he need it in English? Does he need it in recess? Does he need it between settings, classes? Does he not need it in science and he's crushing it in math? It should be lined out per content area where he needs that support.
Blue Apple Design said, You're the only person I have seen talking sped besides myself. Nice to find you.
Nice to find you.
And then she subscribed.
Yay!
Yeah.
We like it, Picasso.
Your director of SPED for the district won't follow the OCR. What are the next steps?
Yeah, so those aren't negotiable. So your district person not following the requirements of a federal agreement, we call that a problem. So I actually have a district now that actually told me at a meeting, I won't tell you where, but the state starts with a consonant. That'll give you a clue. And she said that she didn't feel like she had to do the rest of the OCR. Here's the deal, love. Federal requirements have nothing to do with feelings. They're called requirements. And so I rarely find that happens, but you have to comply with the Office of Civil Rights. Whether you have a state complaint, a due process, or a federal complaint, if the parties do not abide by it, then you have to refile.
Could you imagine if I just was like, man, I don't think I'll take your recommendations, federal government?
Yeah. It wouldn't work for you and I. It does work for some people, I hear. I hear.
How do you get on an IEP when you have dyslexia?
So it's based on the acuity, right? So there are some kiddos who are, which is probably not the correct term, what I would call classically dyslexic. They only and solely have dyslexia. So there's 4 reading SLDs, right? Dyslexia, which is phonemic awareness and decoding, basic reading, that ability to take apart a word and put it back together with fluency and cadence and prosody. Reading fluency, which is the rate, words correct per minute. And then, of course, reading comprehension. So there are some students that when they're tested appropriately in all 7 Gs, they only have the category of dyslexia. They don't have, they're not struggling with basic reading, they're not struggling with fluency, and they're not struggling with comprehension. So sometimes, very rare in my experience, or Alicia's or our partners, that occurs, then they would solely need their dyslexia delivered on a 504 plan. But most of the kiddos we serve, when I say most, it rhymes with most, have dyslexia. They have another SLD, and they often have one of the 3 ADHDs. ADHD, what am I thinking? ADHD combined type, ADHD inattentive, and then ADHD hyperactivity. They often run together. Somebody said they love my outfits. Should we tell them where they come from, Alicia? Talbots. Mm-hmm.
I don't even have to ask.
Don't
Can
even.
a student with an IEP that goes to regular summer school, not ESY, be kicked out for behavior?
Yeah, you can be kicked out for behavior in ESY. Absolutely. Students with disabilities are still required to follow the student code of conduct, some with accommodations and some with modifications.
I don't know if this is a question. Oh, here we go. IEP meeting scheduled for the last day of school with 3 team members missing. Any suggestions?
You would need to reschedule because you do not have a convened IEP meeting.
My high school denied my doctor's prescribed medical alert service dog because I wouldn't get a scam ID. I have tried to give them the ADA info, but they insisted all come with IDs.
The dog has to have an ID. Is that what you're saying?
I'm guessing, yeah.
I'm not certain about what that is. I would reach out to ADA, the Americans with Disabilities entity, and see if they can be of service to you.
If you need to ask a question that's longer, where would they ask that question?
You would email it to advocate@specialeducationacademy.com.
I will put the Advocate at Special Education Academy, but I can't put the .com, guys.
Yes.
Just know that's what comes next.
Yes, .com.
.com. Sorry.
Somebody said mahalo. I like that.
Yeah.
They just did.
Mahalo. I'm trying to find the first half of this girl's question. If my child has an IEP and started in a behavioral small setting, then was transitioned into gen ed, and placed in a college level class on the subject, but it is the most hardest subject, is that okay?
So when we say okay, the better word is it appropriate for the student? A lot of times there are kiddos that have the aptitude, meaning they're high cognitive, to do higher level instruction, but they can't do the depth and breadth. They can't do the pace of it. They can't do it without support in those classes. So I greatly caution my families who have a child with an IEP, no matter what their cognition is, to not put them in higher level classes if they can't easily fulfill the requirements of that course.
All right. Can you hear me? No allowable accommodations on district testing in the latest IEP. He has always had them. They're in a new district. What do they do?
So there are 3 different types of accommodations, and these are generals. There's other places in the IEP that would be, you have daily accommodations, and then there are district accommodations. Obviously, those are standardized. In that section, I always put allowable accommodations, and then we decide based upon the state that we're in, which are state allowable accommodations. But there is no district in America that doesn't have any allowable accommodations. So I would reach out to compliance at your Department of Education for your state and say, what's up?
Are you going? District holds the CSE meetings without the SOPs present and then classifies the student as speech and language impaired. Thoughts?
Wrong? It's just wrong. So we have to have that related service provider to go over their testing, make recommendations, whether it's in the present levels, the accommodations, the annual IEP goals, and certainly the schedule of services. So, of course, we're going to have that related service provider at the meeting.
Can you request an independent FBA if you don't agree with the one the school conducted?
You can request an independent IEE. That's an independent education evaluation. So if there's an evaluation that the district did that you don't agree with, you certainly have that right procedurally to ask for that evaluation to be done by somebody outside of the district who's a vendor for the district at the expense of the district.
Do private schools have to respect 504s?
Respect? So I don't know about the word respect. Most private schools that I know of would do their best to honor a 504. 504 is very different than IDEA. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is a federal act that entities receive federal funds for. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which is the 504, is a civil rights act for being an American with an identified disability, and there's no funding for that. So I would assume that they are going to fulfill the requirements of your 504.
All right.
Somebody said they love my makeup and my knowledge. Could that be like the name of a t-shirt? Makeup?
That should be the t-shirt.
That should be the t-shirt.
What should be included in a school-based FBA?
Important information about the student's behavior, the frequency, the acuity of it, what we can do to reduce it, what we've found does not work, what exacerbates it, and how we can head it off.
My son is in SE and doesn't have dyslexia, but has a teacher's reading and math. Is that common?
No, I don't know if I understand the question completely.
I don't understand either. Their son is in special education and doesn't have dyslexia, but has a teacher's reading and math. I don't know. Maybe
the teacher's reading to the student. I don't know.
Try another way.
Yeah.
My IA was pulled from my class to one-to-one a student who doesn't have a condition that qualifies one-to-one services. How can I, as a teacher, advocate for her to be back?
So it's not so much that you would advocate for her to be back, but you advocate for the students in your room to have their 504 plan or their individualized education program implemented with fidelity. And I would say to them, I feel very uncomfortable knowing that we're not implementing as required by state and federal law. And then bada boom, bada bing. And it's a good time of year to buy those pool noodles in case you have to hit somebody over the head with them during football season.
Good old bonking.
Bonking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. District approved IEP for my son May 6th, then called a meeting on May 30th suggesting the IEP be dissolved.
Dissolved? Is this like a bath bomb? Listen, you had an IEP, but listen, it's been 3 days. Enough already, all right? What? Dissolved. That's the first one, right, Alicia? I would like to have my IEP dissolved. You're coming to a dissolved meeting. What? We make it up as we go.
Independent school district.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there such thing as a? Oh wait, where did it know? Where did it know? Hold on.
Somebody's asking how they can become an advocate. So we have lots of trainings. We have digital products that are standalone products at Special Education Academy. We have a 2-day intensive, which is going to be what you need to get equipped, get the knowledge that you need to navigate and negotiate successful student outcomes at an IEP meeting and get you on your way to being an advocate for your child, a loved one, or as a vocation. And then, of course, we have the Mastermind, which is the deep dive, how to be navigating, negotiating successful IEP meetings as myself or our partners do.
All right. My child was taught all year by a sub and not a sped teacher. I just found out. What can I do?
Well, they were taught all year by a sub? Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
So the first question is, was the substitute a special education teacher or a general education teacher, depending on that role? And then based upon that answer, I would file a denial of a free appropriate public education. So I love substitutes. I find it very rare that they have knowledge of the student with a disability, and sometimes they've never even had access to a 504 or an IEP.
Is it discriminatory to a school or for a school to move only their severe students to a less safe school?
The things that are discriminatory are the things that people make a decision on. So, when I do my in-person trainings, I always say, is it against the law to drive 100 miles an hour down the road? It only is against the law if somebody, gives you a citation and you have a consequence. So that doesn't sound like it's a good choice. I don't know that it's illegal.
Perfect. They say you have beautiful makeup. Are you a special education teacher, Karen?
I am not. I'm a good old college dropout, but because I'm not a quitter, I dropped out of a lot of colleges. So I've been doing this here for 28 years. I represent families all the way through due process in Texas as a non-attorney advocate for the last 10 years. 20 years of doing mediations, really doing a lot of OCR complaints for the last 8 years. So I do not have a college degree, but I do have a certification. I'm a mediator for the family courts for high conflict divorce and elders.
Ask me now, ask me.
Are you a teacher?
I am a certified special education teacher.
Yes, and she is in charge of me.
I sure am. I have 3 degrees.
She has a
degree. I'm still not as smart as Karen, so it's fine.
My brother said when he was on his way from this earth to heaven and he would take a lot of medication, he'd go, this is my sister. She's not educated, but she's self-taught. So I'm definitely self-taught. So Alicia, could you get me a self-taught certificate?
I got you.
Okay.
I told you I'll make you a certificate that says whatever you want.
I want to get a doctorate in talking. Who's gonna contest that?
Not anybody I know. How do I know when to keep pushing and when to accept maybe he doesn't need an IEP?
When all of his areas of need are in the average range. When his areas of need functionally, cognitively, academically, behaviorally, communicative, socially, emotionally, functionally, eating, hearing, listening, talking, walking, when all of those things are in the average range, he no longer is in need of an individualized education program.
Yeah,
and then you go like that at the end. I can tell you, in almost 30 years of doing that, I can count on less than one hand kids that didn't need an IEP other than graduation.
What happens to an IEP when a parent chooses to homeschool?
So the IEP is good for 36 instructional weeks, 1 year. The testing is good for 3 years. So if you choose to homeschool, I would still recommend that you hold his annual IEP annually and make a plan should he return. Otherwise, you kind of have to get back in line. I have a family right now that's returning to school as an 8th grader, and the last time he was in school was in 5th grade. So we are going to have to start him in public school, and he has autism and speech impairment with no IEP because they didn't keep up with it every year. So you can have the IEP every year, even though the student's not attending that school, as long as you're still zoned there. That would be my recommendation.
All right. Nonverbal child, never given speech therapy, only given communication goals. Is that acceptable?
Absolutely not ever. What are you talking about?
What the Hello Kitty?
Yeah.
My son has an IEP and is experiencing bullying in his gen ed class. What can I do?
So bullying is an administration issue. It's not a special education issue. So you would want to take that up with the principals and ask them what they're going to do to keep your child safe. Because whether your child's general ed, 504, valedictorian, special ed, they can't be successful at school if they're not safe. And I find that most schools have a bullying policy and processes that they do go to. But you have to tell them that in writing.
Yep. Bullying, it's when you file it correctly, it's a good.
Yeah. Correct, right, Alicia?
Mm-hmm. Correct. Can I combine written expression and reading comprehension hours into a single ELA gen ed class period?
2 totally different disabilities.
Correct. Yeah. But you can work on both of those goals.
You can work on them, yes.
Yeah. How can I get the school to provide CBI tips for my high schoolers?
I don't know that you can. So there is a great resource, the Oregon Transition Resource Handbook. Did I get that out? The Oregon Transition Resource Handbook. I just spoke this week as the keynote in Utah for their transitions conference. And the Oregon Transition Resource Handbook is an amazing document that's available to you. But you certainly would probably be the one that has CBI suggestions sometimes for certain schools.
This one says, I'm not sure how familiar you are with New York State guidelines, but is it true that a student must perform below grade level?
Below grade level for?
I don't know, that's as many characters as she had.
Yeah, so it might be, so you don't need to perform below grade level to have an IEP. We have lots of kiddos, Alicia does, our partners do, I do, that have IEPs that don't have a single academic goal. So don't get, caught on that train. So if they have an educational need, they have an educational need. And then I'm going to answer another question, Alicia. So somebody asked, do you have to take the 2-day intensive before you take the Mastermind? You do, because what we're going to talk about in the Mastermind, we've already passed from the 2-day intensive. And so you want to use your time in that time period to work on next steps.
That's true. True. Can a teacher on an intern credential run IEP meetings?
Run them? Well, good news, nobody runs them. Literally, no pun intended, usually nobody runs them. So could they be part of an IEP team? If you're a human that provides an educational product to the student, you're certainly welcome to come to the IEP meeting. If you're somebody that supports the parent, you're welcome to come to the meeting. So we are all a team to collaborate to help that student be successful. So I would say yes.
Yeah. A 7th grader with cerebral palsy can't use the bathroom alone. District ignores IEP accommodations. What do we do?
I'm assuming you mean IEP accommodations about restrooming?
Yes.
Well, that's a civil rights violation. You have a civil right to have dignity and honor around functional and needs. And so I would file a civil rights complaint. I would make sure that you know how to file a civil rights complaint. We have an amazing digital product on our website. I think it's 5.5 hours long of how to effectively file Office of Civil Rights complaints and the many steps that go in them. Because if you do them wrong, the complaints get thrown out, and often parents don't understand why. It's a very, very sort of limited scope of your ability to identify the issue, respond to the issue, and speak in legal language. And I'm not an attorney, but I'm a non-attorney advocate, but we've really honed over the years ways to file Office of Civil Rights complaints effectively. And so that's something that anybody on our team could help you with. So if you need help with that, just reach out to advocate@specialeducationacademy.com.
Karen, I think we all want to know, but specifically Amanda Elizabeth wants to know, how did you learn all of the information that you provide?
So, do you guys want to see something? Okay.
Oh, show them the wall of knowledge.
Do y'all want to see the wall of knowledge? Okay. So this is some of the seminars and legal trainings that I've taken. That's some of them. So you can ask Alicia, I probably spend 5 figures a year educating myself on advocacy, legal components. I am a huge proponent of information. So I do trainings on how to work with people, legal requirements, state laws, statutes, federal requirements, IDEA, regulations, reauthorization, and I barely know anything, and I just want to keep learning so I can train other people. And so kids have 2 things, right? Kids have a future and parents have hope.
I found the rest of the New York question.
Okay, we're ready.
Okay. Must they perform below 2 grade levels in order to qualify to test for reading?
So that must be specificity either around state testing or something. I'm not certain about that. Anytime you have a question that is specific to your state, now remember that no state can reduce the benefit of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, but they can have different language about their state standards. So really every state education agency that we deal with are lovely. Sometimes there's a gap between the state education agency and the local education agency, but I would reach out to compliance and say, can you give me some understanding around what I've been told at the meeting?
All right. The special education teacher is acting as the case manager and diverse learners teacher. Is that legal? So
Yep.
they're acting as 2 different positions in the meeting.
So the case manager is often the special educator, so that would be allowable. The case manager couldn't also be the general ed teacher. So you have to have five stakeholders, right? The local education agency representative, somebody that can do evaluations and answer questions about those, general education teacher, special education teacher, and the most important, the amazing parent.
Correct. They are the most important.
Most.
Daphne really wants to help children and families. Can you please direct her in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to go wrong with taking our 2-day intensive, and then when you are ready for more knowledge past that, then certainly do the Mastermind.
Okay, and this one, I haven't even read the rest of your comment yet, Vicki, but she commented and said, "Hi, I'm just a parent." Well, we gotta dissect that right.
No such thing as just a para. We love, paras walk on water. We love paras.
Yeah, so you're not just a parent. Okay, yeah. You're an amazing parent.
Yes.
But at her school, they do not have any special education teachers, and she does it all. Is that legal?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And here's what I would say to that. We don't have a teacher shortage, and in America, we're not running low on money in school districts. We're not. Every year, there's a gazillion dollars left in federal grant money that schools don't apply for through special education, through Part D, as in Daphne of IDEA. So this is a school fund appropriation issue. It's always been a school fund appropriation issue, and I assume it will be for a while. I've been to, I think, every school district in Texas prior to the great COVID, and I've never seen a football team that didn't have brand new jerseys for 7th graders. And I love football, and I love volleyball, and I love tennis, and the marching band, and track, and all 3 of my kids were in all of those. We fund in our district what we focus on, and we focus on what we care about. And when there is equity for individuals with disabilities that are school age, that will be apparent in the classroom.
Jude says hi.
Hi, Jude.
Jude, if you don't stop.
Jude, if you don't stop.
Yeah, he wants me. How can we transfer schools out of district that has a better rating for academics and hold on, I'm looking for the rest of Brandy's comment. And I can't find it.
So let me speak to that. So schools are rated on the general education population. It's also illegal for realtors to tell you if this is a good school or not for special education. So you can go to the best rated school in your state, and it could be the worst school for the kind of special education that your child needs. So if you're going to really find out about school districts and what they're good at, you need to talk to a great advocate. You need to talk to parents groups, knowing that everybody's experience is different. But we find that when we advocate for kiddos, that there are districts that have specificity. There are districts that are good at behavior. There are districts that are good at vision. There are districts that are good at dyslexia. There are districts that are good at autism. So, but you want to find a district that has a special education director that likes children and likes adults and will think outside of the box.
Do you say speech impairment or speech impediment?
Impairment. But I also say tomato, and some people say tomato. And I also say drawer, and people say draw. So your speech is not in the normed and average range. Impediment, impairment, speech and language disorder.
You should say Jude right now.
Okay. Has he been in the mud? Has he been in the mud puddle?
No. Okay. Are IEPs less effective after elementary school?
I find that teachers may not have as much knowledge of your child's IEP because of the number of teachers, right? So when you're in elementary school, you have one teacher or you have two switch teachers. We also find that parents have a lot more involvement in their child's IEP in elementary school, and that fades over time, which is exactly the wrong thing to do. So any of us who have had children, little children's, and then we had teenagers, we realized that the teenage years, you needed to be much more involved than the little years. And so, we need that done right. We need that done right so that we're writing a robust transition supplement for them to be post-secondary successful for gainful employment, independent living, and further education. But until they're out of school, you need to be all in.
All right. What's your opinion on charter schools? That's how we feel about it.
Yeah. I would never, ever, 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 ever tell my client to take their child with a disability to a charter school. Ever, 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 ever. Ever.
So, ever?
Ever. Mm-mm.
Okay. How do they know that the student never received speech? They're not at school with them.
So you would reach out to the speech pathologist and say, hey, tell me what it looks like when you're working with him during speech. Tell me how you're making gains on goal 7.2. Tell me what you do with him on goal 7.8 to get these outcomes.
Okay, my son is autistic and going to the 9th grade, and I applied for a 1-to-1 and he was denied.
Yeah, so we don't apply for special education. We deliver special education when there's a need. So you would need to convene an IEP meeting and talk about what you believe your child needs to be successful. And then based upon that, it sounds like you might have a disagreement. If you disagree, you can always file a state complaint.
Okay, no inclusive playgrounds in the county. How do I get inclusive playgrounds for children?
You would file a federal complaint with the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights. We file on playgrounds all the time.
Do they need a degree to be an advocate?
I do not have a college degree. So I'm going to go with no.
Okay, say hi to Harley, Karen.
Hi, Harley.
All right, does an IEP label my child as a quote unquote behavior problem? He isn't at all, but I was told IEPs are red flags.
Well, if an IEP is a red flag to an educator, I don't want them educating my child. So an IEP simply means that the student needs more education that can solely be provided from the general education teacher.
All right, can a child with an IEP opt out of the STAR testing in Texas?
So that is certainly a decision that you have to discuss with your school. There are 5 million different ways that it goes. There are school districts that will let children opt out, and there are school districts that will not let you opt out. State testing is not under IDEA, and it's not under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and it's not under state statutes.
Okay, are there any specific things you'd recommend for asking for in an IEP for a kindergartner who elopes?
So I would ask for a functional behavior assessment. So we need to find out what is the function of that behavior. When does it present? He's probably not eloping 100 times a day. He's probably not eloping when he's really interested in something. He's probably not eloping when he's enjoying something. It's probably not eloping when he's engaged in something. So let's try to figure out what those triggers are and mitigate them.
All right, this one's asking, is the 2-day intensive training available online or is it only in person?
So there are no in-person right now, and it's on demand. So you could take it tonight. You could start tonight. Did we just finish one? We just had a 2-day intensive virtual. We don't have one coming up in the next month. So if you're wanting to do that now, I'd go ahead and just take it on demand.
All right. Is it normal for OT and speech to try and wait till the first grade to do an eval, even though the kiddo qualified for an IEP?
I do find that sometimes related service providers are not always involved in initial evaluations. So I don't know that I blame them so much. Again, parents aren't really knowledgeable about how to ask for special education testing. But the law says that we test for children who have a need for special education and related services. And often parents just don't ask and districts don't offer.
All right, my son's home district just presented a copy and paste IEP from 6th grade. He's going to the 8th grade. What do I do?
I would say we need to look at a date to reconvene when we have appropriate present levels so we can make informed decisions.
This whole muting because of the piano thing is starting to get to me. All right. Why do we do dyslexia screeners and do not let the teachers know? I have had some angry parents.
I don't know. We do lots of screenings and probing and RTIing and MTSS and SST without letting parents know. I don't know that we need to tell every parent everything that we did as a teacher every day. In most states now, it's a statutory requirement that we do screeners for dyslexia, though early, thank goodness.
I was checking my email. Somebody said they emailed their question. Okay. A child is in general ed and has an IEP with behavior objectives and accommodations. However, the general education teacher won't implement. What do I do?
So not implementing, not an option. So if you are the teacher of record and the student has an IEP and an IEP goal that's applicable in your classroom, you have to implement it. To not do that is to deny a student a free, appropriate public education. So depending on which way you want to go and what your outcome is, I would either do a state complaint or a federal complaint.
All right, this one says, my niece's district is moving towards in-class resource, no more pull-out resource. Is that legal?
No, we didn't get rid of resource as part of the federal code. It's 300.115. I've had monster districts. I had a district that had 16 or 1,700 kids in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And they said they didn't have resource for math, and that if we put him in resource math, he would be the only child in the entire junior high with resource math, and he would be alone with the teacher. What did I think of that? I said, I think that's great. He'll get the targeted intervention he so desperately needs.
much do you know about the Maine sped law? Just curious, not a specific question.
So special education law is the federal law, right? So the federal law is the same whether you're in Maine, Montana, or Miami. So this is the federal law. You can get this book on our link. You should all have it. If you're an advocate, if you're a parent, if you're a loved one, if you're a teacher, it is on our Amazon bookshelf. The federal code, the Code of Federal Regulations, book 2 of 4. This is IDEA, the Individual Disabilities Education Act. So Maine law is going to have the same guiding, it's going to have the same requirements because it's a federal requirement. They might have different language in their state regulations. On every website, you can get a printout of the state regulations side by side with the federal regulations. So I would just get a copy of that from compliance from your state. I do know in Maine, when we're in meetings, they'll say down the river, like, I'm going to go to a school down the river. I was like,
not like Homo, where you go down the bayou.
Down the bayou, down the river. I'm like,
you go down the bayou, and then on your way back, you're still going down the bayou. You're not going up.
You never go. You never go up. It's always.
You're always going down the bayou.
Yes.
Never going up the bayou.
Never. Never.
Okay, if a doctor makes an order for a child to have an aid based off of medical issues, even though the child has been without one till now during the 3rd grade, should the school follow that order?
The school should consider any information for the committee based upon the student's educational needs. But doctors don't decide what happens in public education.
Okay. Does my 3-year-old have to be in preschool now? I want him in services first before school.
Does he have to be in preschool now? So ECSE is early childhood special education. Preschool is a different program and product available to certain children with certain criteria in different cities, counties, and states and parishes. They're 2 different things. So if your child has a disability that would rise to the level of needing services for ECSE, then I would start them there if I was your advocate. But either way, I would get them in school as quickly as possible because that exposure to their same age peers is always a benefit.
If a disability is not linked to the removal behavior, is there anything we can do?
Can do about... So, we intervene. That's what we do in schools. We intervene. So sometimes those kiddos need wraparound services. Sometimes they need referrals to community-based services. Sometimes we need an in-home parent training. Sometimes we need to see if they're, generalizing a skill at home that they learned at school. They're generalizing a skill at school that they're not doing at home. But we don't just go, well, it's a wrap. We keep offering other services.
Oh, Lord. Sorry. Oh, pew, 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 pew.
Pew, pew, pew.
Add emojis if you want my attention. My son is not allowed to be social with non-disabled peers during lunch. He is in high school. What can be done?
What? That's the best part of school. Lunch. What are you talking about? That's like, do you go to a restaurant, people aren't allowed to talk? We hear the most ridiculous things. I would say, please put that in a prior written notice that he can't socialize at lunch. I think y'all socialize at lunch. Is it ridiculous, Alicia, the things that schools get hung up on? She's saying yes, but she's muted.
I'm back. Jude was like, nah, Mama, you give me a fruit roll right now. I have waited long enough.
I understand.
Okay. My child with multiple disabilities, included ADHD in school, nurse is consistently not available. What do we do? So,
depending on the needs of the students at a campus, sometimes there's more than one nurse that needs to be hired to fulfill those duties. So that's an issue with the superintendent.
That's a superintendent.
Super. They need to be super and attendant.
Well, this one's a good one. There are a lot of unqualified advocates in the field. How do I determine who I should hire?
You would do a consult with them. We do consults with all of our clients to see, the consult is to see if we're a fit, if we can serve you. We can't serve everybody that calls us. Sometimes it's out of our scope. And so I would certainly, do a consult with them first and ask about their expertise, their style. Everybody has a different style. Their successes. Do they work well with school districts? Because if they don't work well with school districts, they're probably not going to work well for you. But yeah, I would hire an advocate based upon their knowledge, their communication style works with mine. I have a very direct, clear, lovely style. If you want somebody that's more quiet and calm and laid back and goes with the flow, then you wouldn't want to hire me. That's not my style. That's not how I teach. That's not how I train. So if you want an advocate to do things a certain way, then you find the advocate that falls under that criteria.
Let's go. And don't be afraid to fire nobody. Okay. Child doesn't get required medication, which interferes with class time. What can I do?
So the student has to have their medication. That's a requirement. That's why there's a nurse at every single campus. So I'd reach out to the principal and ask him or her, how quickly she can rectify that.
All right. Middle school question. Should I send a copy of an IEP to teachers the week prior to school starting?
Should you? For your own student? I would. It's better to be safe than uninformed, right? So one of the things that we train on is that when your kid goes to school, we take the ZAC pack. And what we mean by that is we provide a picture of our student and then just a little one sheet of him. Here's Zach. Here's what he's good at. Here are his needs. Here are his struggles. Here's a copy of his IEP. Here are my phone numbers, my spouse's number. We're here to help serve you anyway. We look forward to a good year. Teachers get so many students, especially in the upper grades, that's really helpful. And also a student is never paperwork, even if you have the most pristine IEP document, to give some language around their needs and their strengths is always helpful.
Okay. All right. Is it required to send home a draft IEP prior to the meeting?
No requirement. The only language in the federal code about the parent receiving an IEP is that the school district must provide the parent a copy of the completed IEP at no expense.
Part of Louisiana. Sorry. How do you address a parent report that says the student with AU from an outside report, but the teacher report... I'm sorry. This was a lot of reporting. Hold on. Okay. The parent says the student is autistic outside of the school, but the teacher says they do not see any autism issues. What do you do in that case?
So there has to be an educational need. There has to be a need that occurs from when they get off the bus till they get back on the bus, when they get to the campus or before they leave the campus. And we do have kiddos that absolutely have disabilities, but the disability does not present a need that rises to the level of a second teacher during the instructional day.
We have people singing your praises in the comments.
Yay!
Okay. Should 504s be translated in Spanish if a parent is Spanish speaking?
Yeah, whatever speaking you are, you should get your document in that language. That's part of your procedural safeguards.
And you know what? A lot of people don't know that.
It's true. Like in Louisiana, you can get it converted to Cajun.
Yeah, it's called.
It just starts out, it says Shaw.
Sorry. The little Cajun came out me.
Yes.
Student with ADHD, who is in charge of teaching child coping skills and emotional regulation?
So, I hope that we've had PBIS training in all of the schools. I hope that there's a behavior specialist. Certainly, depending on the severity of your kiddo's needs, you might have to reach out to somebody at the district level to come and provide the assistance to the campus.
You know, I'm not going to read any more questions. Nobody's using emojis.
Well, they didn't hear you.
Nobody loves me anymore.
No, you were like fading off when Alicia really needs the emojis, you guys. We both do. We're both very needy.
Yeah. Okay. This one had a wave. So, hey, with a wave. Son wants to go virtual in the fall. Special education wants us to revoke services. What would you do?
I would never let my kid who is in special education go virtual. There's no FAPE online. How could there be? Oh, look, we got a heart and I think it's a puzzle piece. Or no, a heart, a flower, and a heart.
Yeah, we also have a heart, a thumbs up, a little party thing, a laugh crying face, a big smiling face, and a high five. Well, no. Okay. All right. We are desperate to find an attorney in California. My little brother with Down syndrome was kicked out of school. Do you know any California attorneys?
So almost all states have a list of advocates and attorneys at the state education agency. Obviously, they don't endorse them or any of that. So I'm certainly on the list for Texas. You could reach out to COPA, the Coalition of Parent Advocates and Attorneys, COPAA. And they have list of attorneys and advocates in your area.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I totally agree. Virtual teaching was cruel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Somebody keeps, let me just answer this. Somebody keeps asking if there are advocates that are free for parents who can't afford one. There are state agencies. We do trainings for PRN. Almost every state has an agency that provides trainings for parents. I would reach out to your state education agency. They would probably know who that is in your state.
Okay, why don't schools like outside RBTs but don't have their own BCBAs?
BCBAs are not a requirement under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act.
Boom, shakalaka.
Shaka laka.
Do you advocate in New Jersey?
I do. That's so funny you say that. We love New Jersey. Yes. We advocate in every state. This week I was in where? Alaska, Michigan. Even though I wanted to sleep. But they were like, we'd like to talk to you this week. I'm like, fantastic.
All right. Should paras get paid for overtime on their contract? All of them. Everybody in the school.
Everybody.
Overtime hours.
Everybody. Everybody. Say it with me.
Everybody in the club.
Everybody. Everybody.
Can half days be written into an IEP?
Not my IEPs. So I might have a child who's half homebound and then a reduced instructional day. But there's no such thing as half days. If you are picking up your child for part of the day, I wouldn't try to file that your child's IEP hasn't been implemented. The IEP is written for an instructional day. So if they have a medical condition and they're homebound or partial homebound, then that's different. But I don't write IEPs for half days.
All right, last one. SLP in South Texas school districts have 200 caseloads. District will not hire more. What do we do?
I mean, I know that there's a Texas organization for ASHA. I would reach out to Mike Morath, and I would reach out to Dr. Justin Porter at TEA. That's ridiculous. And you just tell them, Karen said, y'all need to come down here and fix it right now.
Fix it, Felix. Fix it.
Fix it, Felix. Fix it, Felix.
Okay. All right, one more. What about kids with mental health? Child had to be hospitalized and couldn't keep up with school.
Is that the whole question?
Well, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if your child has, an emotional or medical need, that's paramount over coming to school. So we look at, do we provide their education in the hospital? Do we provide their education in a psychiatric unit? Do we provide their education in a residential placement? Do we provide their education at home? So that certainly happens.
Louisiana is a one-party consent state. Record if you want to.
I think she just answered a question without asking me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't consent to that, but I consent to that.
You consent to that? It was, do you know what the recording laws are in Louisiana?
Yep.
At the beginning of outdated policy by SPED. Yeah, it's a one-party consent. Record whatever you want.
Yeah, there's only about 6 or 7 states that are two-party consent. So, so like if I'm calling, you know, Virginia, or DC, DC's a two-party state. So, but just because I'm in Texas doesn't mean that that translates. So, record your IP meetings for sure. Because
if you call me, all calls are recorded for quality assurance.
For quality assurances.
I'm not kidding.
She's not kidding. She's not kidding.
I'm not. Okay. What happens in 30 minutes, but typically happens at 8 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday nights?
So we have the Academy, so Special Education Academy. So if you're interested in joining us, you can do that. We're in a series right now, Related Services under IDEA. So we train every week on federal law, the letter of the law, the application of the law, the spirit of the law. And we have over 300 hours of archived trainings in the Academy. And it's $47 a month. Stay as long as you want. It's the most amazing investment, amazing team of people. Show up weekly so that we can resource and serve and equip everybody that's serving kids with disabilities.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you would like to know how to join, there's a pinned video on Karen's TikTok page.
They stripped the music from it.
I know, I gotta redo it.
The music's been stripped, people. So just hum to yourself.
Strip this. Somebody said record all IEP meetings. Why? Hello, evidence.
I like the way you said that. Evidence. That's French evidence. The things that people say in meetings you couldn't prepare yourself for. Like, you know, when a kid's in 7th grade and he has autism and a speech impairment and the speech pathologist goes, I mean, there's nothing else I can do. What? Yeah. Yeah.
Or, we're going to have this meeting and you're going to hold all your questions and comments until the end of this meeting.
But we want your input when we tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you record IEP meetings because you're in there with a room full of people.
Yeah, people just say stuff. And you know what? People only remember 7% of what they hear if they're completely focused, not distracted, and write everything down. So you need to record. All right, we'll see you guys at 8 o'clock on the Academy. We'll be back next Tuesday. Tell your friends, tell the phone, tell the world. Remember, we get it right for the child. We get it right for everybody. We'll see you guys at the next training.